if the first thing I say about Jews is that, oh, they're stingy or they're frugal or they have big noses. Cool. Does that seem harmful? No. But where do you go when people lose interest in that idea, right? My nose is great. There's a side profile for you guys if you're feeling it. The next thing that I go to is like I show up at a TPS USA event wearing a shirt that's like about cooking Jews in an oven, or I play the Kanye West song in a club because I think it's fucking cool, right? Or I do the Jewish like praying hands thing and I rub my hands for money, right? You have to keep getting extreme and extreme and extreme to I can't tell you if all of these people actually truly hate Jews. Like that's not something that I can actually pinpoint, but they are promoting something that's going to increase the level of violence in real time, in real life.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast, where the truth will set you free.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast. We've got a great panel today on the rise of anti-Semitism, and I will let our panelists introduce themselves, starting with ladies first. Why don't you start, Pamela?
Hey there, my name is Pam. I'm often known as the Truthful Therapist, and I spend my time just calling out how messed up our therapy profession is.
Tammy?
Hi, I'm Tammy Weitzman. I have been a licensed clinical social worker for, about 26, going on 26 years. Currently in private practice in North Carolina. And previous to that, I spent about 22, 23 years working in oncology, working with patients and families who were experiencing various diagnoses of leukemia and lymphoma, working in oncology institutions. Yeah, glad to be here.
Sweet. Well, what's up, everyone? My name's Aaron. I am not licensed in anything. I just share my opinions on the internet.
It's better that way.
Yeah.
You're probably smarter for that.
Yeah, maybe I can use, I'm not a comedian, but seems like a lot of comedians just use that as a way to say whatever the fuck they want. So maybe I'll just pretend I'm a comedian. But I did used to be a professional wrestler. So maybe I can just use that as like my way in to say whatever I want. But anyways, I have a podcast. Ryan's been on my podcast. I've been on his. Happy to be back and talk about this very important issue. So cheers.
It brings up an interesting question. We talk a lot about all the strife in the Middle East. We've got a Jewish professional wrestler. Why don't you just go settle all the conflict yourself?
Dude, that's actually hilarious that you bring that up because there's a wrestling promotion in Israel called the Israeli Wrestling Association, and they actually run shows probably every 6 months because they fly in a bunch of people to Israel to do shows, and so it takes a lot of money and investment. And I know the guy who runs it, his name's Jerry. He's a great guy. And they had this woman who used to work for WWE. She was booked to go wrestle there, and they put the graphic on the internet. And she got ripped to shreds simply because she wanted to do a wrestling show in Israel, and people called her a baby killer and a genocide supporter. It's like, this is her job, to get paid money to go to Israel to wrestle. And so the larger sort of picture there is like everyone conflates everything everyone does about Israel to everything supporting the government or everything about the war. And there's a larger conversation about that, but it's like, you guys don't know a lot about the professional wrestling business, but it's like the most sort of woke liberal spot you can possibly be in. And they're so they're like, cancel culture is bad, but then we're going to cancel this person and we shouldn't bully people, but I'm going to bully this person when they do something I don't believe in. And so she had to cancel her. She shut down the booking. So she loses all that money from her job. She had to shut down her Twitter account because she was getting all these threats just from wrestling in Israel. It's like, so, I mean, it's not just in a political conversation, it's bleeding into every aspect of our lives. And professional wrestling is a pretend entertainment, right? It's it's so interesting that you actually bring that up. So I wish you would solve the problems, Ryan. I wish we could go have good versus evil and it would all be good, but it's not that simple, I guess, at this point.
That's a really interesting thing, I think, to kick things off, because a lot of this is not necessarily outright overt, right in your face anti-Semitism. It's weird kind of questionable commentaries about the state of Israel. And I don't think the state of Israel is perfect. I think within the state of Israel, there's plenty of debates about should we do this or should we do that. I don't think America's perfect either. There's plenty of reasonable debates, but there's something the state of Israel is a unique kind of evil, worse than everything else that's going on in the world. And you have to hate that nation specifically. It's we're not exactly saying the Jews, but it's why are you going so far out of your way to specifically hate on Israel uniquely all the time compared to anywhere else. Does that make sense?
So what I was going to say is there truly is something that seems to be this Israel derangement syndrome that is out there. And it's not just on the left, it is also on the right, it is all
Oh,
over.
yes.
It's I'm obviously Jewish. I'm wearing my chai here. I actually spent a gap year in Israel when I was 18 years old. And I grew up believing or proudly saying I'm Zionist. If I even say I'm Zionist, I get so much hate. And I'm still confused on what that means to people, why that creates so much hate, that I just believe that Israel should exist. That makes me a Zionist. Maybe there's a bigger definition that I don't understand. But yeah, it's with that story you just told about the wrestlers that it still kind of shocks me how people react in this way, because most people don't really know about Israel. They've never been there. They don't even know an Israeli. I just don't understand. It's so removed from reality. This is just another country that of course has governmental issues, because what government doesn't have issues? If we say, "Well, I'm just questioning the government," fine, but that's not what's happening here. There's this very strange venom that comes at Israel and at the Jews that I used to try to pretend wasn't really happening, or pretend it was just rare, the progression. And I'm not going to ever pretend that it's good. So I am still trying to make sense of it. Most of what I see, honestly, is online or, institutions like you just described. I don't experience it much in my personal life, which is a good thing. However, it's hard I'm pretty shy about talking about being Jewish online. I don't like to use identity politics in general. I don't ever want to present myself as some kind of victim, a part of a victim class. That's not who I am. But there is certainly something going on here that is not healthy within our culture when it comes to the attitude towards Jewish people.
Tammy, you got anything?
Yeah, where do you want me to start?
Just like that, what seems to be an unfair criticism of the state of Israel that's sometimes seemed to be like a mask for criticizing Jews. It's like, those evil Zionists, but it's like, I kind of feel like I know who you're really talking about. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I think, my sense over many, many years is that anti-Semitism is always there. It's maybe just lying below the surface. It's a little dormant. But I feel like ever since October 7th, it has obviously exploded, and October 7th just gave it almost like a rebirth and more of a right to kind of exist. Now, can people criticize the state of Israel, the government? Sure, I think people can criticize any government. No government is perfect. No country is perfect. No place is perfect. There's challenges everywhere. But I do think that, I have a sense of Israel. My mother was originally from Israel, but she came to Canada when she was in her early 20s as a young nurse, and sort of never really lived there again, except for a brief period of time where she moved my brother and I there for about 3.5 years following the death of my father. But so I did live there. I think it was very hard for me to live there as a child. I go back periodically. I think I'm comfortable being there as a tourist. I have my own trauma with going back there, sort of maybe if you call it a love and hate relationship. But, I think the last 2.5 years have been really pivotal for, I would say, most Jews, but I can't speak for everybody. But I think for me, when you have a sense of it particularly having grown up with a mother who was originally from Israel, who lived many, many, many decades in Canada, but always kept abreast of the news and what was going on. I think that's my experience of most people, most Israelis. And then a lot of my friends who are Jewish, very clued into the current events of kind of what's going on. But, and I think that the state of Israel is used to getting criticism from the world. But I think a lot of it stems from an anti-Semitic lens, it's just, my experience has been that it's just always just beneath the surface. And now it's not so much beneath the surface anymore.
Yeah, I think I've been in denial about that. I've never really acknowledged that. It's funny, I'm from the North. I'm from New York, New Jersey area. And I remember visiting the South, and my Jewish friends said, "Oh, you've got to be really careful. There's so much anti-Semitism in the South." Well, now I actually live in the South. I live in Georgia. And the local Baptist church actually joined with me to put out 3,000 Israeli flags on their lawn. I've gotten a lot of personal support here from the Southern Baptists. So I think there's more anti-Semitism probably within New York City itself than there is here in, southern Georgia.
It seems like
Experience as well. I mean, I'm in North Carolina, and I think that it's been really okay. And I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and I have most of my friends from high school and so forth are still back up there, and it is really, really bad up there right now. For the majority of the Jewish population, it's really, really toxic for them. And I don't have that same experience where I am right now, so it's a little harder for me to relate. But I think growing up as a Jew, and I was educated in Jewish schools, till a certain age, I think you just grow up with it. You just grow up knowing that you're different and that it exists. And every once in a while, it pops out and you hear something from somebody, whether you expect it or not. Generally, it appears unexpected. So it's very isolated for me right now, but it's there.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is sort of like the continuation of extremes on social media, and this could be seen with any act. This is like a young white woman who's saying the N-word with the hard R at the end, right? Because she thinks like free speech is like the ultimate ideal, because a couple years ago some of our free speech was taken away, so now I have to prove to everyone that I can say whatever I want. And that just leads to the more extreme stuff. I mean, I said this before we started recording, but I guess it makes sense now. It's like, if you start with one thing and everything on social media is about grabbing attention and you want to keep the audience that you have to keep saying more and more and more and more shit so that you keep the attention you have. I can relate this to my own life. I said I was a professional wrestler, and when you're a professional wrestler and you start out, you make $0. So I had no money. And so there's like this group of people that you can sort of sell your stuff to after shows. So first they'll ask for like a sock. Can I have the sock you wore into the ring? I'll pay you $300. And you can imagine, as you keep saying yes, you have to do more and more stuff. Now it's like, hey, can you put some, little extra juice in there, and then I'll buy that. And so if you keep saying
What's
yes,
the
what do
juice?
you, use your imagination, Pam. But if you keep saying yes to that stuff, you have to keep doing more and more and more extreme stuff to keep that audience, to keep making money. And it's the same on social media if you're doing streaming, right? Myron Gaines, for example, or it's the same thing if you're doing like if you're an OnlyFans creator. Now you're posting a bikini pics, and now you're doing whatever 50 dudes with the other juice in the back door, right? And so it's the same thing with like how you respond to people. If the first thing I say about Jews is that, oh, they're stingy, or they're frugal, or they have big noses. Cool. Does that seem harmful? No. But where do you go when people lose interest in that idea, right? My nose is great. There's a side profile for you guys if you're feeling it. The next thing that I go to is like I show up at a TPS USA event wearing a shirt that's like about cooking Jews in an oven, or I play the Kanye West song in a club because I think it's fucking cool, right? Or I do the Jewish like praying hands thing, and I rub my hands for money, right? You have to keep getting extreme and extreme and extreme to I can't tell you if all of these people actually truly hate Jews. Like, that's not something that I can actually pinpoint, but they are promoting something that's going to increase the level of violence in real time, in real life. Like yesterday, some dude drove a car into a Chabad in New York, right? That's real violence in real life that's being sort of allowed by the people online who are talking about Jews in such an extreme and egregious manner that give people the credence who may not actually hate Jews, but actually hate their own life, which is sort of the line that's connecting it, that now want to go out and just destroy the thing that they think is hurting them for all these different conspiracy theories that might go. And there's probably a larger conversation about young men and sort of their sort of connection to anti-Semitism, which we can talk about. But I think that's where we're at right now. And it's a large part due to, people want to blame the Zionists or Israel or the war, all that stuff. But a lot of it has to do with social media and extreme content and wanting to grab people's attention and wanting to stay relevant and the validation factor that comes with that and all these sorts of things that lead into, people doing fucking outrageous shit.
Yeah. I gotta say, I mean, it's so hard to figure out what is the line between social media and real life, because it is certainly blurred. I do remember in October 7th, the original October 7th, that I've posted an Israeli flag just in my stories on Instagram. I had a pretty active Instagram. I've been a little less active on it now, but at that time I had a really flourishing Instagram talking out about how bad the gender industry is and how, harmful therapists are when it comes to critical race theory and all the things that we talk about a lot here on this podcast. And then all I did was just post an Israeli flag without even any words. I didn't even say anything. It was, right after all the, horrible things happened there. I had to shut down my account for about 2 months. I got so much hate in a way I've never experienced before by people who were loyal followers, people who agreed with me. They weren't all just trolls. It was an experience I hadn't had. I've gotten a lot of hate online, of course, because I'm speaking about topics that a lot of people don't like, but this was at a different level that I had never experienced before. And it was quite disturbing. I was kind of addicted to Instagram at that time, and well, that cut my addiction pretty quickly. I just shut it down. I had never done that before, where I just didn't want to look at it for about 2 months straight.
It's virulent. It's like its own world. It's absolutely virulent.
Yeah.
And can get pretty toxic. You're right, Pam. Yeah.
But yeah, and I had a hard time. So I am affiliated with Turning Point USA, and I've liked them for a long time. I've struggled with them a bit because this has been bubbling for a while, even before Charlie Kirk died, this anti-Jew sentiment. I'm not going to even call it anti-Semitism or anti-Israel. It's anti-Jew. And there are different variations of it. Some people are really loud about it, and then most of them are sort of have this in-between, I'm just questioning things, or I'm America first, so that's why this sort of isolationist point of view. And then I think a lot of it has to do with what you were just alluding to, young men needing someone to blame in their life. There's just a lot of things swirling around, and Turning Point is kind of this place for that, because that's where people are really online a lot. And that's the one place where I saw the online and the real life kind of connect, because where I actually found, I forgot the name of the organization, the federation that put together those flags, they had a big table in the middle, and I was happy about that Turning Point allowed for that. But then I talked to them, and they said it was about 50-50. They would get about 50% support, but they got a lot of hate too. So it was a mixed bag. And the fact that they're getting so much hate is still honestly surprising. I don't really understand. I still don't understand, because I just don't understand. And it's hard for me to process. And watching kind of the backlash that just happened recently with Myron Gaines, is that his name? The
Yeah.
Cookie Monster guy, influencer that's really radical. And how it wasn't just that he had that T-shirt with the Cookie Monster that said, like, let them cook, which is offensive. People don't like to use that word offensive because that means you're a snowflake or something. But let's face it, it's offensive, and we should be offended at certain things. Let's stop this already. And it's dangerous, really. And the fact that people weren't even outraged about it, enough weren't outraged about it, I'll say, that it wasn't universal, was also just shocking to me.
A lot of this, to me, I feel like, if you trace any conspiracy theory far enough, you're going to end up at the Jews. It's just like, it feels like that's like the lazy kind of conspiracy theory. But so much of this, it's like the type of person who's like, perhaps rightfully so, like the media has lied to us. Like Pamela, we talked about critical race theory and the gender stuff. Like we talked about all that kind of stuff. Like it's understandable to be jaded, and a lot of people spin out and go down these rabbit holes. Well, like what's a bigger thing to question other than Hitler was the bad guy? You know what I mean? And like there's kind of like this new questioning of World War II where we lied about that. Was Hitler actually the good guy? And like that whole like questioning the Holocaust. It's like, it's like, I'm all for questioning, but it's like, haven't we kind of settled this one? I don't know.
I think people don't really know what happened in the Holocaust, too. That's another thing. I actually just wrote an article for Human Events that's about to come out about how they just keep making all these Nazi and Hitler comparisons like it's willy-nilly. Like what's happening in Minnesota is like the Holocaust. And maybe it's bad, maybe there's violence, maybe there's chaos, but it's not the Holocaust. Like, can we just stop it? And anybody who actually believes that, I think they just don't know what the Holocaust is.
That it just kills me when they compare that. What is happening in Minnesota, what is happening in other states is not the Holocaust.
No.
So it's like, is it, but they're just, a lot of times they're just throwing labels. What it is they're just not, it's TDS at its finest, right? And, there's no cure for that, I'm convinced, because you just can't reason with people. You just can't. You want to believe it's the Holocaust? Believe it's the Holocaust. It's not the Holocaust, but we all know, those of us here know what the Holocaust entailed in its entirety. It's been documented. What's going on there is not the Holocaust. But, the difficulty in reasoning with people, and I really believe that since October 7th, the world, especially here in America, has just gotten, everybody feels they have the right to blow it up, like magnify anti-Semitism, and that everybody has, like it's in fashion to be anti-Semitic, right? And pro-Palestine or PLO.
I guess it's edgy or something.
Yeah, right. And, it's like, we've all seen it on social media. It's like queers for Palestine or Hamas, whatever they post. And then you hear somebody, tagging on a comment. Who's going to tell them, right? Who's going to, it's just it's craziness, and it's just being taken further and further and further away. One of the things I want to say is that even though certainly I think the current administration feels this way, even though a lot of DEI has been slimmed down or leaned down, it still exists. And I can tell you with 1,000% certainty that Jews are completely excluded from DEI. Why? Because you're white. Why? Because there's anti-Semitism in there. So, if you're thinking that if you're Jewish and you're thinking that you're going to be protected by the umbrella of DEI, you are not.
This is something that's kind of interesting to me because a lot of the discrimination against Jews in Europe was because you're not white. And a lot of the DEI discrimination in America is because you are white and you have white privilege.
That's the most incredible thing about anti-Semitism is that it can shapeshift into whatever you want it to. And so that's why it's hard to combat at the same time. And that's why it's hard to give like a very concrete definition of what it is outside of like, you hate Jews, right? Of course, that's sort of like the base level of it, but like how it determines what's happening in the culture is also determinant of what it might be and how you can talk about it. And so I think also like Jews have gotten themselves in trouble by kind of doing the same thing that the left did for a while, which is like calling everyone a Nazi. If you call everyone a Nazi, no one's a fucking Nazi. And then you have actual people playing Nazi-themed songs to prove that they are not Nazis, and like this whole thing happens. And then if every time someone goes online and you just comment that they're an anti-Semite, like it sort of ruins the veracity of the word. I think you should call people anti-Semites or Jew haters when they actually earn it. People like Candace Owens and this guy like Myron Gaines, have definitely earned the title, and we have to save these very important words for those specific specific things. And I think, Jews got in trouble that way. And I think probably our PR since October 7th hasn't been very good. And, there's a larger conversation about that as well. But, Ryan, you did mention the conspiracy theory, and I want to mention something about young men that I think is happening in our culture about conspiracy theories and about the system. So young men, as if you guys don't know, like young men are deeply struggling, very, very much so. They're not dating, they're not having sex, they're not going out into the real world. And so young men, because they're struggling, are blaming it on the system. And who runs the system? The Jews. And so there's the line right there. So if I'm struggling and I don't have anyone to blame it on, I don't have a girlfriend, I can't buy a house, I, don't have a job, I can't get it, no one likes me, all my masculinity is toxic, yada, yada, yada. That's on the system. Who runs the system? The conspiracy theory is that the Jews run the world. So I have to blame the Jews. Now, because of that logic, I hate Jews. And so that's the sort of the young man's perspective. Now, is that right? No. Should they take responsibility for their actions? Yes. Are they being a victim because of it? Yes. But there's also a larger conversation about how they are struggling, how we can help them, and how we can sort of get them out of this sort of victim mentality, and where the conspiracy theory fits into sort of the young men's mind frame. Because they're spending a lot of time online, whether it's like pornography, OnlyFans, watching Andrew Tate, all these people. And so they're getting this information and they're like, oh, well, my life sucks. And because it sucks, because the system is against me, because against for a long time, people, there has sort of been this attack on masculinity and strong, sort of capable men and developing them as leaders for our country and all those types of things, which are very important. And so that I think is also an important distinction to be made. Like, again, maybe all young men that you see don't actually hate Jews. They're just like really fed up with their life and they don't know what else to do, right? Because we know at this point, men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women. And it's a lot of young men, struggling young men. Now, I guess the approach would be, right, to take some responsibility for your action, find a right role model, listen to some things, do stuff, eat well, move well, think well. But the easy approach is to blame the system, and the system is run by the Jews. So that's where we end up. And so I think that's important also to think about as we try to sort of solve this and move into sort of a solution-oriented mindset.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is definitely a growing problem. I also just want to say out loud, in case he's listening, James Lindsay was right. This is what he was referring to. This is what I think, at least one piece of what he was talking about when he referenced the woke right, which are people who are finding a new scapegoat that feel victimized because of their identity and blaming the system for things and not taking individual responsibility. And it's similar in a way because, minorities were kept down, on the left, the minorities were kept down, or there were things that, made it harder for them to succeed. But living in this victim mentality and using these identity politics create more rifts and create more problems. And then also the fact that both groups, the left and the right, are looking for bigger government to solve these problems is the exact wrong thing to want. And looks like a lot of these young men are kind of calling for that. They're looking for more authoritarianism to control what they think are the Jews, or all these ills within society that are causing their problems. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
I think it's demoralizing to a certain extent what has been going on, particularly since the 7th of October and just the whole explosion of it. But I think, you've all brought up Candace Owens and people on the right and people on the left. Anti-Semitism exists all across the spectrum. I think what's been difficult for me is people that I haven't known so well, but perhaps, admired a little bit here and there because I could tell that we share the same values. And then they get on Instagram and go off on the Jews or go off on the state of Israel. And that's been really, really demoralizing. And so, to me, and so I sort of bit back a little bit and sent them, maybe a private message saying, that was a little anti-Semitic. Not a little, that was anti-Semitic. Please don't do that. And then I'm thinking of one particular person who then just, posted my message on Instagram. I think took my name off, the private message. And that was really hard because I actually admired that person, but then I found out that person really admires everything that, Tucker Carlson is saying and Candace Owens is saying. And I was like, it was very discouraging to me.
I've been through a similar feeling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, I think this person's probably very loud and open, and that's totally fine. Be you, but careful what you're saying. Careful what you're saying, and careful what you're putting out there on social media. Just people have to be careful about it. I mean, Ryan, I can't tell you how much I commend you for doing this. And we're a small little panel, but just the idea, I was so struck. I was like, all right, Ryan. I mean, it's in today's world, it's a touchy-feely thing. It's like, okay, he's going to go there, and that's great, so thank you for doing this, really.
Yeah,
Of
I
course.
appreciate it.
This is
Yeah.
what, this is what Charlie Kirk would have done. He would have had dialogue, right? And that's what we learned from him. But it's kind of a demoralizing time, and I think that we have to kind of hold on to our values. I mean, Ryan knows, because I've appeared on his podcast before, my story of, being terminated from a very woke institution that I worked at for several years, largely because I was Republican, white, and there were some anti-Semitic remarks. But I will tell you, just going back to the DEI for a minute, I attended a big DEI session, and one of the facilitators of the DEI session was Caucasian, and she was apparently half Jewish. And when I spoke up and tried to relate an experience I had as a teen with anti-Semitism, she looked at me and she said, in front of my whole group, doesn't matter, you're white, you can pass. So really, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, people who look like me, like us, could they pass? No.
No, they got yellow stars.
Right. Saying that to somebody is so horrific. So we're not protected under that umbrella at all.
So I think there's something interesting here. And Aaron, you touched on how anti-Semitism is a shapeshifter. So it's like you're not Jewish, you're actually white. And then we look at Judaism like it's kind of an ethnicity, kind of a culture, kind of a religion. It's also tied to the state of Israel. And so like you could say, oh, I'm not criticizing you, I'm criticizing this over here. Just like in the 90s, you'd say, I'm not racist, I have a black friend. Like, oh no, one of my friends is Jewish. And I hear people like, they'll say this weird stuff like, oh no, I'm talking about Talmudic Judaism. I don't even know what that is, but I'm like, I feel like what you're saying is anti-Semitic, but I don't know any of this stuff, because it's like they've spent years down this online rabbit hole, and now they're saying all this stuff that I can't recognize, but something seems off about it. Does that make sense?
Dude, the fucking Talmud is the most popular book in the whole entire universe, and every person online has read all 700 pages of it, and they're fucking experts, bro. The amount of
Nobody knows
comments,
what it really is.
oh my God, the amount of
Isn't it
comments
like
I get
20-something
online
books?
about the
What about
Talmud
the-
is crazy. Yeah.
The SS Liberty. Keep hearing about that
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah. The
So-
USS Liberty and the Talmud, dude, are the like, they're like, oh, dude, Aaron, are you a Talmudic Jew? I'm like, dude, I've never read the Talmud, and most
No
Jews that I know
Jews,
have never read the
no,
Talmud.
most
But
Jews.
you've read it. You've read all 700 pages. So please tell me exactly how I feel that Jesus is somehow burning in hell, and that's how all Jews feel. It's like, we don't believe that at all. Of course, there's certain pockets of Judaism where there's extreme Jews. Of course there is. Obviously, duh. That's like the easiest thing to say. About every person, there's an extreme person. That's why human beings have been killing human beings since we've existed. But like for the majority of just like the American Jew that lives in the world, we don't even know what's on the first page of the Talmud. But you do. Fucking TikTok username 7282754. Like, get out of here. Like, it's so strange because like it just happens. Like, even when I post like a random video about like sports, they'll be like, something about the Talmud. I'm like, dude, come on. It's like, this doesn't even make any sense. And so it's so interesting how things like become sort of popular, and then they get like the social contagion happens, and then everyone's an expert in this subject except for the actual people that are experts, but we don't believe them anymore because COVID ruined the idea of an expert because they were all fucking wrong. And so now it's like all these things happen and they're all sort of joined together to create this one sort of mesh pot where people can come together and hate this one group of people who's like disproportionately popular and are disproportionately successful, excuse me. And so they're the problem for everything in the whole world. And like, that's easy. But the Talmud thing is like, it sucks, but it's when I think about it now, it's like kind of funny because it's like the most complicated book in the history of the world.
I don't understand it. How do they understand it? I grew up going to camp and doing, being Shomer Shabbos, and I spent a year in Israel. I have a lot of exposure to my culture, and I don't know the Talmud.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important about the Talmud, though, before you go, Ryan, it's like, one, it's not Jewish law.
Yeah.
It's not Jewish law, so it's very, very important. And everything in the Talmud it's kind of like the game of telephone. So if I tell something to Ryan, Ryan tells something to Pam, Pam tells something to Tammy, Tammy's going to get the most construed, weird information that I even started with. And that's sort of what the Talmud is. It's a collection of debates and ideas. And like every different segment has a different debate and different idea. And one rabbi thinks this and one rabbi thinks this. And it's like an oral documentary of like thousands of years of stuff. And so you can see so many different things on there about so many different ideas. And none of it is Jewish law. It's sort of commentary on the Torah about things that some people do follow. And there's some, and I mean, so I think that's an important piece to think as well, because most people that look at the Talmud, they're like, this is what all Jews follow. This is the law. They're, sucking the blood out of little babies' penises when they do a fucking circumcision. I'm like, nobody does that. Like we didn't like I had a son 4 months ago. We had a normal circumcision where we had a doctor in there and he did the thing. Like no one's sucking the blood out of his there again. The thing about that is though, like there are certain people who still do that, and it's a fucked up custom, and we as Jews have to call that out. Like that shouldn't happen to young boys. And so again, people conflate a few people doing certain things to everyone because Jews are really the only people that get collective punishment. If one Jew kills one person, all Jews are fucking murderers. And if we did that to all people in the world, all of us would be horrible humans. One white person kills this person. Okay, all white people are bad. It's like, what kind of world are we going to live in if we think everyone is evil for the thing that someone action that other people did? And I think that's where the problem is with Jews and the Talmud and all that stuff. And now I'm rambling, so I'll be quiet. And I'm also getting sweaty because I got a little fired up.
I like your rambles.
Tell me if this is accurate. So, like, the Torah, the first 5 books written by Moses, that's considered the law, and it's like considered like an authoritative word of God, right? But the Talmud is like people commenting and like debating the Torah, but the Talmud is not considered the word of God. Like that's correct. Okay.
No, it's the word of just some rabbis who are having commentary on that, basically. Yeah, big game of telephone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met this guy the other day, and like this is kind of what I was saying before we started recording, how like there's a rise in like normie anti-Semitism. Like if you saw like a decade ago like a neo-Nazi with a shaved head, like you could see 100 yards away, like I probably don't want to talk to this dude. But like I'm seeing like more normal looking people who seem to be like assimilated into society, like holding these ideas. And I met a guy like a couple months ago, and I remember what we were talking about, just like randomly out of nowhere. He goes, at the Wailing Wall, when the rabbis rock back and forth, they're having sex with demons. What are you talking about? You hear this type of stuff, and it's like, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where this stuff comes from.
I mean, is that something people believe? I'm actually out of the loop. I don't even know how bad it is. Maybe that's good that I don't know how bad this all is.
I mean, I'm like online a disgustingly large amount, so I probably should fix that. But like, I've never heard that in my life. So
okay.
I talked to another guy, this is a couple months ago as well, and he goes, just completely randomly, not prompted, goes, Hitler was the first person to pass animal cruelty laws? He goes, makes you think, doesn't it? And just walked away. Like, just that? And I know this is just like whatever their algorithm is feeding them, but I hear like these types of little comments, and I hear like a lot of stupid things, to be fair, but like the weird, dumb anti-Semitic things, or like anti-Semitic adjacent things. It's like it's increasing, and like I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something there.
Wasn't there just a protest at Jerry Seinfeld's show? I mean, that's crazy that
yes,
someone that mainstream, that sort of A-list maybe the most popular comedian of all
He doesn't say a
time,
lot of controversial
perhaps.
things either.
No, he doesn't even talk about it. And there was a big protest in front of his show recently. It's
Yeah.
hard to know again, it's hard to measure what is real and what is just amped up from the internet. I mean, I think a lot of it is sort of, I guess I'm projecting, but I guess it's similar to the past where it's not a large amount of people, but it's enough people being silent. And that's the problem. That's the
Yeah.
way I perceive it. I mean, when I'm watching sort of the Turning Point crowd and those sorts of people, I don't think most people there actually hate Jews, but there's enough people that are just going to either dismiss it or not say anything. Either they're kind of afraid or cowardice about it, but I think also they just don't really recognize it as that bad or it's minimized. That's what I'm noticing the most.
I think some of this, what we're talking about, is not just a handful of offhanded comments or a distasteful T-shirt here and there. If any of y'all have read Wilfred Riley's book Hate Crime Hoax, he goes over a lot of hate crimes that are hoaxes, but then he says, like, of real hate crimes, the population that gets the most real hate crimes per capita is Jewish Americans. And like, so there's some real world effect for all this chatter, like that's
And
having actual
it
consequences.
never gets the press. That's the other thing. There's never outrage about it. Whenever a Jewish store or Jewish business gets vandalized or a Jewish school gets graffitied on with swastikas, things like that, you only hear about it in the local news or it's a little blip. Whereas if something like that happened to a Black community or a Black business and it was said, had the big N word across it or we hate you or something, that would be national news that we would be hearing about it for months on end. But we never hear about it when it happens to Jews. I mean, after October 7th, I remember a lot of like Hasidic Jews were attacked in New York City, and that was barely covered. So stuff, yeah, it is strange.
Well, when it happens to Jews, it's a false flag because if the Jews run the world, then the Jews are doing it to themselves, so the Jews shouldn't get the sympathy because they orchestrated the whole thing from behind the scenes, and so now it's like this big fucking hoax. I mean, some people even think the Bondi Beach massacre that just happened was a false flag. To give more sympathy to the Jews because their PR has been so bad from the Israel thing. It's like if everything is a false flag and if everything is being orchestrated behind the scenes by this 2% of the population, then there's no reason why I should give any sympathy to anyone who's associated with Israel or the Jews, whether you're Christian or Jewish or not, because you orchestrated this thing from behind the scenes. So I'm not going to give you this false sense of sympathy because you're the ones fucking pulling the strings. And I think that's where people are at right now. And just like you guys, do a lot of work sort of and talked about gender a lot, right? We reached sort of the end point of the fringe of sort of the gender thing where like they wanted to make like people who were interested in young people like some sort of LGBTQ sort of part of the flag. Like that's fucked up, right? And sort of we've reached sort of the very sort of end potentially of this sort of Jew thing where everything is the fault of the Jews. So where do we go from here? Hopefully, as they say in Batman, it's darkest before the dawn. Hopefully this is the darkest part and we get a little bit better now and people start coming back to reality. But I think you have to sort of reach the fringest endest point for people to realize like, oh my God, this is absurd. If how is everything a false flag? They control the whole world. The guy yesterday, the Jews controlled him to drive the car into the synagogue and this and that. And it's like, holy cow. And so that's how people are sort of rationalizing the idea that they don't need to feel bad for the Jews because the Jews are doing it to themselves. And so the sort of the gig is up. The Zionists are up. Like we can't be controlled by these people anymore. And that's that is the conspiracy theory of the world. At least that's how my brain is sort of conceptualizing it. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that.
I think you understand it better than me. I'm not as attuned. I just, yeah, I'm more of a normie around it where I'm just not fully understanding it. I was aware of what you were talking about earlier about the men struggling with being told that they suck all the time and having that being scapegoated onto the Jews. And also, I get a lot of this where because there's so many progressive Jews, and some of them are even in my own family, they get blamed. The right wing anti-Jew people are blaming Jews for all this woke madness, and in certain ways, they're kind of right. I mean, they've just a part of it, but it's not. It's just it gets all muddled up. So
I want to say like there's a big like on the right wing side of things, this idea that like Marxism is some Jewish plot, but like Karl Marx himself is a huge anti-Semite. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Dude, Ryan, you can't, like, logic, facts, reason, throw it out the window, dude. Okay. I mean, I'm not sure why Tammy even gave you credit before for doing this. You're only using this to use Jews to get clicks. Okay, bro. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. Tammy was trying to be nice. I don't know why she was trying to be nice. You're putting this on. We're going to talk. You know, that's what people are going to say. It's like, whatever, dude. The whole thing is messed up. I'm just joking, by the way, Ryan.
So I feel like there's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says something along the lines of what a man says may sound good until a second person comes along and gives a different perspective. And I feel like if you just look at these people's algorithms, like a lot of it would make so much sense. You're like, man, Israel is like, killing so many people in Gaza or whatever. And what you're not seeing in your algorithm is, well, Saudi Arabia just killed 100,000 people in Yemen, and Syria just killed 100,000 civilians over there. And they weren't tactical strikes. They weren't dropping leaflets telling people to get out beforehand. Like you're not seeing that in your algorithm. You might see something in your algorithm like, look at these 30 people in Hollywood who are all Jewish, but you don't see the thousands of other people who are like not Jewish in Hollywood. You know what I mean? Like you see this very limited slice of reality, and it seems to tell such a
It's very selective what they're showing, and you don't know what's behind the scenes, right? You don't know the other side. Yeah, it's very selective to get clicks, to get attention, to get, and that's also so much of this too. Pammy mentioned, I don't know, are the people really anti-Semitic or not? Well, they're dumb, if they're just kind of doing this kind of stuff, right? But
they're followers. That's what I've learned about people in general.
They're followers, they're agitators, they're instigators, they're, maybe miserable in their lives. And okay, so miserable in my life, let's go pick on this group of people, right? I don't see it dying down now that the war is technically over and the last hostage has been returned. And because I think to a very real extent, October 7th just gave the world free rein to just, be anti-Semitic. I think that's really what's happened.
I was surprised that, I am still surprised that it's still sort of going on. I thought it would kind of be a phase, like
Die down a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would be a reaction to what happened and some of the propaganda, but then the internet would move on to its next outrage clickbait, and it never did. Never did.
Hasn't yet. I don't
No.
anticipate that it will. I don't. And who knows, now, potentially the US may strike Iran, and I'm sure that Israel may be part of that too, and people going to blame Iranian regime is horrifically abusive. Are people going to blame the Jews for that? Probably,
Already are.
They already are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you this, I didn't understand the 7K remarks, how we all supposedly, by the way, I hope we all get our checks in the mail, $7,000 here.
Wait, what is this?
Oh, Ryan doesn't know, dude. Oh, yeah, baby.
Putting that in my comments. I didn't know what they were talking about because I posted something pro-Israel, and they all said how I was making this $7,000. I had no idea what they were talking about.
It's always specifically 7,000.
Yeah, I guess there was a announcement. You probably know more about this, Aaron, but I guess Israel did make an announcement. They're going to try to help their PR by paying some people to support them or whatever. And
Yeah.
Can you explain this to me? The $7,000.
If y'all could put in a good word for me, I'd appreciate it.
We will all mark my words. If people comment on this, if any haters comment on this, somebody will comment about how we all are about to make $7,000.
Wow. Okay.
Talking positive.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like there's a bunch of countries who pay people to talk about them in a positive way. Like Tucker Carlson's the prime example. He's getting paid an absurd amount of money to talk about Islam and Qatar in the most sort of kind-hearted, nice way possible. You know, I don't have any real information, so I'll say alleged. So whatever. But like, so Israel's PR hasn't been very good. And just like any other company or country, they want to pay people to talk about them. And so some information came out that like every single influencer ever in the history of the world who posted one thing about Israel immediately got a $7,000 check in their bank account. Okay, that's a fucking absurd, dude. I've been talking about this for like the last 2.5 years. I haven't gotten paid a single dime. But Ryan, when you end this episode and you press like send to wherever you at, it's like magically appears into your account. So
I'll
check that out.
account.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's like a
you'll get
very
double
fucking
because you're hosting
yeah.
it.
It's dirty money, kind of like if you did OnlyFans, but it's like from the Jews, right? And so it just drops into your account magically, and then like you can use it for whatever you want. And so that's like the whole thing. So anytime you post anything online, it's like, how much you getting paid from APAC? I'm like, dude, actually this post, since it was longer than 2 minutes, is actually 14K. So it's fucking crazy. So I usually try to talk for 60, 70 minutes, and like one post gets me $100,000, and I'm good for the year. You know, I put it away for my son's bar mitzvah. It's in 13 years. It'll be great. Dude, thank you so much. Fucking right. It's like, it's like such a like, so it's like, it sucks, but like, and then at the same time, I can't not laugh about it because
so
like, it's
absurd.
also, it's absurd. It's absurd. And of course some people are getting paid, but some of the most prominent people who talk, I'm sure James Lindsay is not getting 7K from Israel. And he's been a very staunch supporter of just like reason and logic and like speaking about things that are like, he thinks are factual and he seems to be right most of the time. And he's not getting paid. He's probably someone I would pay
money.
if I was Israel. I
actually
definitely
just saw
would pay him.
recently.
You know,
I just saw
but
him
anyways.
recently, and he's lost money. He's lost most of his speaking arrangements that he used to have. He was doing really well a year or two ago before all of this, and then he started speaking out against what was going on the right, you know, some of the problems he was observing, and he's pretty much lost all of his main income.
Yeah.
I think he'll be all right in the long run, but he certainly took a hit.
I hope so. Seems like a good
doing
man.
it for money, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of what we're told in a lot of ways. Like if you actually wanted money, if that was like your primary motivator, you'd say something like, you know, the state of Israel's behind whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually unusual for me. I notice I kind of shrink up. It's really sad. Clearly, I can't hide that I'm Jewish, but like I don't talk about it, and I kind of shrink up about it a little bit. That's when you know it's real. When you're not like out there like, I'm oppressed, stop oppressing me. You know, like other minority groups do, especially on the left. That they're, you know, the whole Alphabet City group, you know, they're constantly talking about their genocide happening proudly, like out and about. They're being genocided, but they're out wearing their purple hair and their everything else to signal who they are and how they should be genocided next. But if they were really scared, they would not do that. And I noticed that I'm honestly not that. I'm not going to I'm trying hard not to be clearly I'm here talking to you guys. I'm not going to hide per se, but it's not something I'm boasting about. It's not something I do have the impulse to want to more shrivel up about it because I am I don't know, scared isn't the right word, but not comfortable.
Yeah. My mom and my wife tell me every time to put my Jewish star away.
Wearing my chai.
When I'm out and about and when I'm out recording videos, and it's like they're scared, right? It's like, you know, I think that goes to show you my mom is not someone who spends a lot of time online, right? So she doesn't know who friggin' Myron Gaines is or any of these people, right? But she understands sort of just even in a larger culture that it can be scary. And we have seen real world violence. So it's not just like made up bullshit that we're just scared of. We're like real people are dying and getting shot and getting run over and like massacres are happening. And so I mean, maybe there's a reason to be scared, but I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to do. I mean, I keep talking about it, so I don't know. Maybe I should be more worried than I am, but
I appreciate it because like people like you, people like Ben Shapiro, it actually helps me just feel less alone or less like I need to hide.
Yeah. But we did mention Iran. It's like we're seeing the sort of the double standard play out in real time, right? Like I think the last numbers I looked were like 35,000 innocent people killed in like a span of, I don't know, 2 days, a week, something like that. But since the people that are oppressing them are brown, and they fit into sort of the ideological sort of perspective of the Western left, it's like, well, then they're doing nothing wrong. And like, if we topple the Iranian regime and let the actual people be free, then we're helping Israel, and we can't help Israel. And if the United States bombs or helps Iran, it's like due to the fact that Netanyahu controls Trump, and like all of these strings are being pulled. So we'll just ignore it and let all these innocent people die. Because it has partly due to the Jews, but we really care about Gaza, even though that was a war, and the war started because they massacred civilians on October 7th. But since I don't know how long, 1970 or something like that, the Iranian regime has been in charge. I'm not sure the exact number, but like for 40-ish years, right? They've been just destroying their people, raping, murdering, pillaging. But we don't care because it's not Jews. So no Jews, no news. And so that's an interesting sort of double standard that's like being played out in real time, and watching people sort of rationalize their decision making behind it has also been very, very interesting. And I think that's sort of the pinnacle of like people's hypocrisy about what they think about the Jews in Israel, and all the humanitarian aid and all these things that are so moral, and they have like the virtue signaling about all this bullshit. And it's like, you don't really care. You're just doing it because you want someone to tell you that you're nice online and that you have this unearned moral virtue, but you're not actually doing anything in real time to be moral and ethical and live a life that's like, full of duty and actually caring about human lives. You just want people to say like, oh, dude, I hate Jews too. And like, yeah, go Gaza. Like, fuck off. Excuse my language.
I like your language.
Okay, thank you.
So a lot of this, I got a couple questions left for y'all. A lot of this, like anti-Semitism, stems from the need for some society to have a scapegoat. So like in 1930s Germany, the Weimar Republic was dealing with hyperinflation, and that was like a pretty complicated problem to deal with, but an easier problem to deal with was blame the Jews. I feel like as we're seeing this new or rising blame the Jews narrative in America, what are the real problems that we're not looking at if we're looking at that? Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it's what you were talking about. I think that our culture, we're at a brink with our culture, especially with the men. The men have received so much crap. They have been told they're awful for so many years. I mean, I don't know when it started, the 60s, 70s, but really within the last 20 years, the toxic masculinity movement, this whole Me Too movement, men can't do anything without being accused of being raped. If you've all been taught to hate your own sexuality, to hate your impulses, even just in school where you're not allowed to fight, when you're not allowed to fight back if you've been bullied, because that everybody gets in trouble no matter what the context is. Just the way maleness has been sort of erased from our culture. I do think that has a lot to do with what the crisis we're seeing with these young men.
Yeah, I mean, the solution seems simple. It's like, if we could get every young man to have a girlfriend, to buy a house, and get a good job, anti-Semitism would go away.
Yeah.
Like, it
Get them
seems
off line and
strange,
get them off porn
but like, if they have a girlfriend, someone to like actually interact with,
that
and
loves
like,
them or cares about
and they
them.
can, and they can understand that like masturbating is not the same as actually having sex. It's like totally different and way fucking better. I promise you it is, dude. And when you do it for the first time, you're like, holy, whoa, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go out into the real world and like fucking do shit. But like, the encouragement is like going out and trying, right? Because there's so many layers to like going to talk to a human female in public that men are very worried about. What if they're seen as creepy? What if they're posted online? What if every message they've ever sent to a girl is Snapchatted and posted on Instagram for everyone to make fun of them about? What if they get rejected? What if their friends don't support them? Like, all of these things. And there was the same thing happening when I was growing up, but no one was posting it online. And like, we just didn't care. Like, because the only motivator I had in my life to get my shit together when I was a young man is because I want to have sex with a girl. It took me till I was 18, and I figured it out. And then I just, well, okay, we have it for the first time. You start moving in the right direction. But the thing about that is like, that sounds like crass, but it's actually great activation energy, because then once you start moving forward and you start working out and like trying to get a good job and like building yourself up, you realize you're not doing it for anyone else. You're realizing that actually it makes you feel really good and powerful and strong and fucking capable. And then you also realize there's a downstream effect of that. Like, oh, when I'm like not super focused on getting something, it actually comes more to me. And so now I'm more attracted to the female sex, but I just needed something to get me off my ass. And that's hard for young men right now, to convince them to get them off their ass. Now, I'm in the sports world a lot, so I see a lot of young, determined athletes, and that's easy for them because they have a goal in mind. I want to be great at this. Young men who aren't in sports need something that they can be great at. They need a place where they can express their excellence. Where is that? I don't know. I don't know, because they're not going out in public. I talk to a lot of young men. I'm like, frequent the same coffee shop every single week and see who you run into. That's the same. And strike up a conversation. They don't have to be a woman. They could be the same dude you see every week. You're just practicing these sort of skills that you might happen. Like go to a run club, do a workout class, go to a religious community, be around other people. And yes, it's going to feel awkward and you're going to get rejected. And even the dude you asked for coffee might say no. And that might suck. But you're going to wake up the next morning and realize you're not dead. You didn't die. It sucks. Yeah, rejection hurts, but like you build up this callus for rejection, and it applies to every area of your life. Then you apply for your first job and you get denied for the first 10 and you get the 11th one because you're still trying, because you've practiced all this stuff before. It builds you up. And now kind of got away from the idea of
No, that's great
anti-Semitism.
advice. I'm really getting
Uh,
inspired right now, and I'm not even a man. Thank you.
Yeah, I talk about this. I talk about this a lot, so I get pretty fired up about it. But I think if you have a thing in your life that you're striving for that's like deeper and bigger than yourself, you're not going to care about the system that you think is running you, because you're so driven by the fact that you want to pursue this thing. And young men, you're 16, 17, 18, 19, all the way up to 20, you don't need your life purpose yet. You don't have one. You don't have enough experience yet. You don't know what you want to do that's going to drive you for the rest of your life. But you can pick something. And maybe that something is, I want to, have sex with a chick, or I want to make $100,000, or I want, like, it can be an outcome-based goal. We like to demonize these outcome-based goals, like extrinsic motivators. I want to make money and I want to have sex. Like, those are fine for the beginning part of your life, because again, get you off your ass and they get you moving, and you need something like that. And then eventually, right, you have this intrinsic motivation about this feels good, or you're 25 years old and you want to, start thinking about having a wife or starting a family. I mean, it took me till like 33 to have a kid. Like, things just like happen when they happen, right? I didn't meet my wife until I was 28, probably because I was having horrible behavior and I wasn't ready for a wife at that point. Yeah, right. Like, if I had met my wife at 22, I've told her this, I would have not tried to marry you. I would definitely try to have sex with you. I wouldn't have tried to marry you. Anyways, I've been talking a lot about sex now recently, but I think that's an important part for young
Clearly
men.
it's important.
It is. It's super important. But like,
I was just watching this funny movie, just one of the guys, and there's a line in it. It says, "I have a lot of sex. Now I want to have it with a partner."
Yeah, dude. I mean,
Funny movie from 1980.
What's the stat? It's like young men in the United States, aged like 19 to 24, 50% of them haven't had, sex with a woman or asked a woman out in the last year. Like some stuff like that. It's like, that's wild. I asked like 100 chicks out in a night if I was at a bar, and got rejected most of the time, but like, whatever, fuck it. You just rock and roll. And that's what we need to teach them. Like a place to develop their excellence,
Now
a place
they'll get Me Too'd, and they're scared for a multitude of reasons, not just
Of course
for
they
their
are. Yeah,
insecurities,
of
but
course.
because the culture has. I'm not saying they should still do it, but I understand why it has shifted. And then, of course, our everything, you can do everything online. You don't have to leave your house. Am I frozen? I look frozen on my screen.
We still hear you.
It'll upload fine.
All right. So anyway, you can do anything from your house. You don't have to leave your house. It's like weird how you can live your life. You can work, you can get food, you can get all of your social, what you think are your social contacts, all from never leaving your house. How many days do people go without leaving their house? Especially if they're young and they've never lived. I think that's so bizarre to think about that, to come of age in that way. And so, yeah, they don't learn how to socialize and interact. And of course, back to our original thing. Yeah, I think that breeds a lot of anger and resentment, and now the Jews are being scapegoated.
Yep.
Tammy?
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what everyone said. I think it's Jews being scapegoated. We're a convenient scapegoat for people, you know? I honestly don't see this dying down. I think, again, 7th of October just really provided a platform and free reign for, if it was dormant before, just to explode kind of into society. I hope it dies down, but I'm not sure that it will. Yeah, but all of these conversations are so good to have. So again, thank you so much, Ryan, for providing us with this platform.
Yes.
Of course.
7K, cha-ching.
Cha-ching, cha-ching. Oh my God. I needed some money.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I like to end with some kind of a positive note or a solution and like some tip on how we fix this. And I doubt that anti-Semitism is ever just going to go away completely, but like, what can we do to try to get the insanity to a more manageable level?
I would say that it's important for people to be proud of who they are, to be careful about the content that they put out there online, if they're going to be visible. The internet never forgets. To just be really decent about things, I can understand that we can get hardened as a people and more self-protective because there's so much hate out there. And I do think it's really important at the same time to not allow that hate to consume us and to change us. I think it is important to stand up for what we believe in, to speak out when someone's wronged us, when someone has said something to us. Again, choose your battles, because you're not going to be able to reason with all of these haters. They see life through a completely different lens. But I just think it's important for each individual to be the best citizen, the best human they can, right? Stand up tall, speak your mind. I always say to people, be humble and kind.
Rock on.
I like that.
I mean, I think I offered a little bit of a solution, but I'll speak again from the young man's perspective. Like, I think that's a large part. So if we can fix that sort of demographic, I think a lot of these issues start to go away. And so again, we need a society that first acknowledges the fact that, one, young men are struggling, because I think we like to ignore it, and then we'll just tell young men that, dude, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, you'll be fine. That's just not working anymore. And so they need actual help. We need to acknowledge the fact that they need help, and that they're blaming the system, and that the system is quote unquote run by the Jews. And that's sort of the problem. So if we start with the root of it, the root of it is that young men are deeply struggling. And I think the most important part is, like, one, how can we prop up the right role models? That's really challenging, because the social media algorithm is going to promote people who get clicks and have fancy cars and take their shirt off a lot and all this fucking horrible, stupid shit, like Andrew Tate. Granted, I took my shirt off a lot when I was in my 20s being a wrestler, so just don't look up my name on the internet. And so, again, one, role model, super important. So, like, people like Scott Galloway and Jocko Willink and, fucking Ryan and Chris Williamson and all these type of people who, like, are trying to leave the world better than they found it. I think that's the sort of the piece that we can tell young men. You have a duty and an obligation and a moral responsibility to leave the world better than you found it. And the only way to do that is to take full responsibility for yourself, while also being able to ask for help from your role models, from your mentors, from people that you've built a relationship with. And then young men need the ability to express excellence. I mentioned that, but through their physicality, through their, powerful, capable beings. And we need to also be willing to accept that fact. And then I think through all of that, they can get a girlfriend, buy a house, have a good job, and their ability to blame the system will actually go away, because they have taken full responsibility for their life. And maybe those things can be applied to other sort of populations, but I'm really invested in young men, and I care about that deeply. And also Jews, of course, at the same time. And so if we can solve that, maybe in the next couple years, 5-10 years, we're going to see a lot of flourishing young men. And the more that young men flourish, the more that women actually flourish, because then they create great partnerships and great relationships and great marriages, and they produce children, and they have better communities. And, like, all of these things have huge downstream effects that compound into what society could deem as flourishing society, which is what I want to live in, what I want to leave my son with. And so that's what I think is a potential solution.
I don't know what else to add. I'd say probably if you're seeing a lot of stuff online, to get into real life, more real life. Although watch our podcast and then go into real life.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
You said that at the end, though.
But I honestly, a personal thing, I'm having some like eye issues, so I haven't been on social media as much, and it actually is helping me feel less overwhelmed. I was feeling overwhelmed by this whole anti-Jew thing. It was getting me really down. I was talking to my husband about it, who's not on social media as much, and he just doesn't see it because he's not on social media as much. I'm like, no, but it's real. No, but it's real. Well, I got on social media. I'm not saying it's not real, but it does help your perspective. So that also just speaking up, I'm really grateful lately. There have been more people with prominent microphones that have been speaking out against this more in the more recent months. I think people have been ignoring it, hoping it would go away, and clearly it's not. So I hope that we all speak up, and I hope people with big microphones, small microphones, they don't let things slide. You don't want to be combative, but letting people know it's not okay and it's not cute, and I think that will help.
Thank you guys so much for a fascinating conversation.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you.